Hockey Parenting 101 video. Today's video I'm just going to talk about penalties. I'm just going to talk about the difference between the penalties, what the penalties are, give you a few. You've seen the ref like make motions, gestures. You probably picked up on some of them already if you've been around the rink for a while. Some of them you may not understand, like why they call boarding versus charging versus checking from behind versus body contact. Yeah, so depending on what level you're at, checking there's not allowed until you get to the U14 level on the boys side. So they might call it checking, which you're like, wait, I thought you could check. Well, not at that level. So, but I'm just gonna go through just penalties in general, yeah, let's go. So there's several types of penalties. There's minor, major, match. So I'm going to go through all those fairly quickly. Minor penalties in hockey usually bring a 2-minute trip to the penalty box. At the youth level, depending on the time, association rules, USA hockey rules, league rules, like if you've got a 12-minute period, they may have only 1-minute penalties, or a tournament, they may change the penalty time. But typically it's 2 minutes. I've seen minute 30 and I've seen a minute for minor penalties. So a minor penalty is just that. It's a minor infraction. You can also get like double minors if they do multiple things during that same play until the whistle blows. You could get a 2-minute for one penalty and a 2-minute for another penalty. You can also, I'll talk about a 2 and a 10 in a little bit, I think. Yeah, I'll talk about a 2 and a 10 in a minute. So minor penalties are just that, like I said. Common minor penalties include high sticking, where you make contact with the opposing player above the shoulder with your stick. You'll see the ref go like high sticking. If it results in an injury, that's another caveat. If there's an injury, it could be even more of a penalty. It could be a major. It could be a 2 and a 10 is what they call it. I'll get into like misconduct, which is really 12 minutes. That's something that can be confusing. I'll go into that in a minute. So high sticking. Holding. So if you grab a player's body, sweater, or stick, preventing them from getting the pucks, it's holding. You'll see the ref do that. Hooking, using the blade of the stick to hold an opponent or prevent movement. Hook. You'll see the ref like make a motion like they're holding the stick and they pull back. Cross-checking, a hit in which a player uses the stick held with both hands to check an opponent from the front or back. You'll see the ref do that. That's cross-checking. Roughing. So roughing is just kind of like just a capture all, like anything else really. It's striking an opponent during an altercation that the official decide is not severe enough to earn a more severe penalty. If a player punches another player with the gloves or during a skirmish, we'll sometimes give a roughing penalty. So it's like a non-hockey related movement that's like not egregious. You'll see that, like roughing. And then tripping, causing an opponent to fall by tripping with stick or body. You'll see the ref like bend over, like right, and then like do like a chopping motion at their ankle. That's a tripping penalty. So sometimes you may get confused, like why they call it hooking versus tripping. It's just how the ref saw it. That's really the minor penalties. The major penalties, these come with usually in youth. These are the ones that'll get you a 2 and a 10. So a 2 and a 10 is interesting. So if the ref calls a 2 and a 10, not only will there be a 2-minute penalty served by the team, so a 2-minute power play or whatever it is, the player that has the infraction will also have to serve an additional 10 minutes. So someone else is going to have to come in the box, serve the 2-minute penalty kill, but that player that got busted for the infraction is going to serve an additional 10 minutes. So you'd be like, why is my kid in there for 12 minutes? Well, that's the penalty. It's 2 plus 10 minutes. It's not 10 minutes. So just keep that in mind. And that's a pretty rough penalty because that's 2 and a 10, especially at the younger age. That's a full period. It's almost a full period even at the high school age. So hopefully your kids try to stay clear of any major penalties. So major hockey penalties in general, it's a stronger penalty for more severe infraction. A major penalty comes with sometimes 5 minutes in the box, or I've seen more like a 2 and a 10. So at the youth level, it's 2 and a 10. I don't see very many 5-minute major penalties, but they can be called. Well, we'll get into that. So I'm sorry, I'm screwing this up a little bit. So major penalties are the 5 minutes, but most of the time I see they add a 2 and a 10 for a misconduct penalty, which I don't know. I'll get in that in a minute. So I guess I need to backtrack. Major hockey penalties come with a 5 minute. Some of those typical infractions include boarding, which is checking, tripping, or pushing opponent into the side or end boards. So if you actually make a pushing motion, that's considered boarding. Spearing, strike an opponent with a blade of a stick in a stabbing motion. Don't see that a whole lot at the youth level, hopefully not. Slashing, striking an opponent with a stick, often seen as a chop to the lower body. Charging, you'll see the refs do that. A hit in which a player takes multiple strides to gain speed to punish an opposing player, or if the player leaves his or her feet to maximize the impact. So that, like, they're going after somebody, they'll give them a charging penalty. Also, with the boarding, it's usually what happens if, like, the kids are the boarding versus the checking from behind along the boards. It's usually boarding, there's like some space between the player that gets hit and the boards. Checking from behind usually happens when the kid's already on the boards and somebody gets hit from behind, and they're not prepared for it, so they get blasted and face planted into the glass, and then they get put down. But I would say that's dangerous. Boarding is even, I would say, more dangerous because there's a gap there, so they may like go in head first. Check to the head, any contact above the shoulder pads, and then obviously fighting. There is no fighting allowed in youth hockey. You will get maybe a major. You probably get tossed. It depends on what the league rules are for that. So that's major penalties. Misconduct penalties are any of those penalties I talked about, minor or major, even mostly major, that comes with a 10-minute spell in the box. So that's the 2 and a 10s I talked about. I don't remember the last time I saw a 5-minute penalty called. Most of these at the youth level get called as 2 and 10s. So the player gets the 2-minute penalty, someone else serves that for them, and then they sit in the box for an additional 10 minutes. It allows them to cool off. It's really supposed to give them an opportunity to cool off and like, oh man, I just wasted like most of my game sitting in the box. I need to be more careful. Now, game misconduct penalties. Yeah. So the misconduct penalty is the 10-minute spell. Game misconduct penalties, they get ejected from the game. That's usually, if you see a 5-minute major, then you also see a game misconduct where they're kicked out, and that's based on the official's judgment. For example, when a player is assessed a major for boarding an opposing player, but that player suffers a significant injury, then there may be a upgrade to that infraction resulting in an ejection. The penalty goes into the books as a 10-minute penalty, but the team can immediately substitute another player once the penalty's over. Game misconducts, getting kicked out of the game, usually result in you lose the game, for that player is out of the game. They also may have to go before the hockey board, the league's board, and they may get further suspensions. And then the last thing you may hear is a match penalty. A match penalty is essentially an ejection from the game. Goes in the scorebook as a 10-minute penalty, but the player is immediately sent to the dressing room. And that usually also comes with a 5-minute major penalty. And that a match penalty, the difference between a match penalty and a major penalty is used when a player looks to intentionally hurt or tries to hurt another player. So they were not playing hockey at all at that point, but the major penalty, they may have been trying to make a hockey play. They just came in too aggressive. and it was a dangerous play. A match penalty comes when a player the refs can see that the player is intentionally trying to hurt another player. So that's an instant ejection, and then for a match penalty you will definitely go before probably not only the league board but your own board, and you may be sitting for a while. I've seen kids, especially at the high school level, get match penalties and they sit out for 30 days, so it's no joke. All right, that's the quick and dirty on penalties. If you have any more questions about that, USA Hockey's got a great website that talks about like details of penalties, but that's the Cliff Notes version. I think that'll get you through until you can start paying more attention to yourself and like determining. And it also depends on refs. Refs may see things differently, so you may not understand why they called that penalty, which you can talk to your coach about that, because they may bring it up to the ref as well. But okay, that's all I have on penalties. Appreciate you watching. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe. Give me some ideas for future videos if you don't mind. I'm actually starting to run out of material, so I could use some fresh ideas. With all that said, this is Crisis DN again, signing off. Appreciate you watching. Out here.